Hello everybody, I am here in Durres once again. What you might consider the very top of the city. And I'm going to be taking a little bit of a walk, which pertains to this video of what to do in Durres Albania in the winter months. Right now, when I am creating this video, it is the second day of March 2nd, and I've been here since middle of January. So I spent all of January here, and well, half of January here in the middle of February. Excuse me, half of January, all of February. I actually just made a verbal agreement to continue staying at my apartment through June. So I will be here in Durres for a long time, but going forward with this, what to do in the winter months in Durres Albania. Starting off, if you make a simple Google searches, you'll find out the obvious of what I'm going to state anyway in this video. And that is the Durres Amphitheater. It's definitely something everybody should visit. Some people aren't really into history, but I think once you actually visit the amphitheater, you'll appreciate the history, because it has a lot to do with the Roman period. And the Romans ruled a lot of this area. The Roman Empire was just spread all over this area, and Durres was a very important place for the Romans here. So that's definitely one thing you should check out. Going along the lines again of history is definitely the Archaeological Museum. Same thing with the amphitheater. A lot of old Roman relics, artifacts, but also Illyrian artifacts. And I don't know too much about the Illyrian culture, but I do know it was a culture here, spread throughout the Balkans, I believe. It could have been just Durres, or just Albania rather. I'm not too sure of the specifics involved with what the Illyrians were, but it's a rich history nonetheless, and filled with a lot of Roman culture and things dating back to I think like 300 BC. And I made a different video about that, so I'm not going to go too much in depth on the history here, but it's definitely one thing you're going to want to check out when you visit Durres Albania. Come along for the hike with me, and I'll discuss more of what there is to do here. One of the next things I would suggest doing here in Durres is visiting the castle. It's short and sweet. You can't go inside at all, but it's definitely something that should be checked out. Once again, it goes back to the Roman times, and it goes along with the history. So it's a quick stop. You walk by it, take a picture. Oh wow, I've never seen that bird before. Interesting. Short attention span, I'm sorry. But the castle is definitely something to see, and you'll recognize it because it's kind of in between the history museum, the archaeological museum, and the amphitheater. It's right in that same general region, and so the castle is definitely something you should do. And check out the overlook here. When also visiting Durres here, I would say that if you're not visiting the cafes, you're not really living Durres life. Durres is a place where coffee lovers come. It's definitely a staple of the culture here, whether it's cappuccino or espresso. You definitely should indulge I haven't seen too much tea. I know they offer it. It's not a tea culture drinking place here, a tea drinking culture rather, but the ambiance of cafes is just set aside, basically all alone in a category of what to see here in Albania. It's definitely a huge culture of coffee and caffeine, and it's more of a social gathering than anything. So yeah, cafes is definitely something you should be checking out if you're not only in Durres but in Albania. But Durres definitely has a lot of cafes, more than what they have restaurants. So, and sometimes they're intertwined, so the restaurants and the cafes are kind of together, just like in the United States or anywhere else you would go across the world. The same kind of concept, sandwiches, food, and things like that. But most of the time people just go and have an espresso or a cappuccino. One thing to note and to keep in mind here is there's not regular like United States drip coffee. You're not going to get that type of coffee here. It's more like I stated, the cappuccinos and the espressos and the lattes and things like that. But nonetheless, at least try it, even if you're not into something like that. It's definitely worth something to check out. And once again, it's part of the culture, so you almost want to check something like that out while you're here in Durres. Another thing to visit here is the Scenic Overlook. It's on the very top of the city here in Durres. It's definitely one thing you should definitely check out when coming here. It's usually always packed, especially around sunset and sunrise, but it's definitely one thing you're going to want to check out just because you're on top of the city. Another thing I can recommend to do here is the beaches. The beaches you're definitely going to want to see here in Durres. They're beautiful, and why I put beaches in things to do in things to do in the winter time. Some young kids behind me want to be on camera. Things to do in the winter time here is because the beaches aren't packed at all. In fact, there's nobody here as far as tourists go. So even though you can't swim, the beaches are definitely something you should do, because you can walk down the beaches every single night for sunset. That's where I'm going to be heading now. As you can see, the sunset down here is very beautiful. So walking down the entire coastline, which is just down in this area right here, you can walk the coastline for probably 5 to 6 miles, and just to visit the sunset is just absolutely beautiful. So it's definitely one thing you should be visiting in the winter time, are the beaches. And it's not just a summer thing here, because swimming is a summer thing, not beaches. So I'm going to double emphasize the beaches here in Durres. Visit them in the winter time. It's absolutely beautiful. Okay, some of the more things here to visit in Durres in the off season or the winter time is the restaurants. I know I mentioned the cafes earlier. It's getting really dark here, so I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see me. But the restaurants, I mentioned the cafes earlier, but the restaurants, and one thing that kind of wraps everything all together here with saying the restaurants is you can pretty much get a table and a place to sit rather right away. There's no waiting. That's one nice thing about the low season here, is the wait for things, getting into cafes or restaurants or things like that. But I specifically say the restaurants here because the food is so desirable, not only from the locals but for tourists as well, which in return packs these places, just fills them up. So I've noticed now that we're getting closer into the springtime, like I said, it's the beginning of March now, the more tourists are starting to come in, which means the longer the waits at the restaurants. So like a month ago, when I first came here, a month and a half ago, there was really no waits whatsoever for the restaurants. So definitely that's one thing to see. And not only that, but the Albanian cooking and the cooking of the cuisine of the Balkans in general is definitely something you should try out. And it's definitely something you should try out in the winter time and the summertime, but specifically for this video is the winter time here and in Durres. Okay, one of the last things I want to mention here about things to do in Durres is another thing that you could definitely do in the summertime, but since this is a video of what to do in Durres in the wintertime, I'm gonna wrap all these things together with saying they're nicer to do in the wintertime because less people is here. Durres is relatively a tourist town. So a lot of tourists come in here in the tourist months, obviously, of the summer months rather, June, July, August, September. So coming here in the winter months, all these things that I've mentioned so far are great to do because less people are here. Now Durres is still a big town. I think right around 200,000 people, 150 to 200,000 people. So there's definitely a lot to do here yet. But it's not as busy. And so this is the downtown area of Durres, and there are a lot of people walking around down here. But you take away the tourism industry in the off months and you'll see that there's so much more to do and it's less crowded, which at these times is something that's a huge advantage for a tourist coming here. So to wrap it up, one of the things that I want to say is to walk around. You should definitely walk around in this city. It's definitely a walkable town. You can get from one end of the city to the other end in about 5 to 6 miles. And now I live all the way on the other side of Durres in Plepa, which is past Plaza. I know to some people that doesn't even make sense. But I am roughly around 5 miles away from the downtown area, but there's so much to see between there and here that you should just take it all in. You don't have to spend any money. You don't have to really do anything. Just walk around and see the sights here. As I mentioned before, the museums and things like that, they cost money, but just walking around the city is something that is free, and it's something that you should do in every town. And with the crowds not that much here, not too many crowds rather, it's one of the things that you should definitely do. And I'm gonna lump that in with something else. If you do want to spend money here, as you can see all the way down here is the shops. Should definitely visit more shops when you're here, especially at these times, because there's the economy is so bad, obviously, like as bad in the rest of the world. So there's so many things to shop for here. It's definitely one of the things that you should try doing when you're here. Spend some money, and things are relatively inexpensive here. So check it out. Walk the streets down here in the city center, or not the city center, the plaza area, the beach. Like I mentioned before, walk the beach and do a little bit of shopping. And you know, when you can wrap that all together with the things that I was talking about today, of, you know, wake up in the morning, make a day out of it, you know, walk around the city, go shopping, stop at the cafes, stop at the restaurants, go to the museums. You can make a full day out of that, 2 or 3 days. And that's one thing I would recommend here in Durres Albania, especially in the wintertime. Because like I said, the crowds are to a minimal here, and there's so much to see in this city. So yeah, I hope you like this video. Until the next time I see you again, just remember, to inspire is to be inspired. Leaving you from Durres, Albania. Peace.